These are the television moments from 1994 that didn't just entertain us, they rewrote the entire playbook for how we consume media. While we thought we were simply tuning in for another season of TV, we were actually witnessing the death of one era and the birth of another. September 1994 stands as the great dividing line in television history. Before that month, we lived in a world where three networks dominated our living rooms, where watching TV meant gathering around the set at a specific time, and where our viewing choices were limited to whatever the executives in New York and Los Angeles decided we should see. After September 1994, everything changed. The transformation began on September 19th when NBC premiered a medical drama called ER. Michael Crichton created the show from a script he'd written 20 years earlier, and it introduced us to the chaotic emergency room of Chicago's County General Hospital. But this wasn't your typical doctor show. The cameras moved like they were strapped to a gurney racing through the hallways. The dialogue overlapped, and medical jargon flew at breakneck speed. Over 23 million viewers tuned in for that 2-hour pilot, and they discovered something they'd never seen before: television that felt real. 3 nights later, on September 22nd, 6 unknown actors gathered in a coffee shop for the premiere of Friends. Jennifer Aniston almost wasn't there. She was tied to another show called Muddling Through, and her casting wasn't locked in until the 11th hour. When they shot those first promotional photos by the fountain, she was asked to step out of several because NBC wasn't sure she'd be playing Rachel. Nearly 22 million Americans watched that first episode, nestled between Mad About You and Seinfeld and NBC's Thursday night lineup. Here's what made 1994 truly revolutionary. It wasn't just about these 2 shows. The entire television ecosystem was fracturing and rebuilding itself simultaneously. On June 17th of that year, 2 seemingly unconnected events occurred that would reshape how we think about television forever. That morning, a man named Lemoyne Martin walked into Cowboy Maloney's Electric City in Jackson, Mississippi, and became the first person to purchase a DirecTV system. For $700 plus $35 a month, Martin gained access to 175 channels beamed directly from satellites to an 18-inch dish on his roof. By the end of 1994, DirecTV had signed up 350,000 subscribers and was adding 3,000 more every single day. That same evening, Al Cowlings drove a white Ford Bronco down the 405 freeway in Los Angeles with O.J. Simpson in the back seat. An estimated 95 million people watched that slow-speed chase, more than had watched that year's Super Bowl. Every major network interrupted regular programming. NBC found itself in the surreal position of splitting screens between the NBA Finals and a potential suicide in progress. Domino's Pizza had its busiest day in company history because nobody wanted to leave their television sets. The O.J. chase revealed something profound about television's power, but it also exposed the medium's limitations. We were all watching the same thing at the same time, but we were hungry for more channels, more choices, more control over what we watched and when we watched it. The networks could feel the ground shifting beneath them. Warren Littlefield, who was running NBC Entertainment at the time, would later say, "We knew at the time that we were entering into a world of choice. The number of channels was at 50, but on its way to 100. The old model of appointment television, where families gathered at 8 p.m. to watch whatever the networks had scheduled, was beginning to crumble." Fox had already thrown the first punch. In December 1993, Rupert Murdoch's upstart network had done the unthinkable. They'd outbid CBS for NFL rights by over $1 billion. When the 1994 season began, football fans had to retrain themselves to find their games on Fox instead of CBS. Pat Summerall, the voice of NFL broadcasts for decades, admitted, "It's a shock. It hurts. It's a big part of my life." But Fox's gamble worked. They poached not just the NFL, but also 8 CBS affiliates, 3 from NBC and 1 from ABC. The big 3 weren't so big anymore. Meanwhile, cable networks were multiplying like wildflowers. 1994 saw the launch of FX, IFC, and HGTV, networks that would still be thriving 30 years later. Each one carved out its own niche, its own audience, its own identity. The mass audience was splintering into thousands of micro-audiences, each with their own tastes and preferences. The shows that premiered in 1994 seemed to understand this new reality instinctively. My So-Called Life, which debuted on ABC in August, spoke directly to teenagers in a way television never had before. Creator Winnie Holzman didn't talk down to her audience or sanitize the experience of being 15. The show was painfully honest about adolescence, and while it only lasted one season, it would inspire everything from Buffy the Vampire Slayer to countless teen dramas that followed. Greg Berlanti, who would go on to create the entire Arrowverse, called My So-Called Life the most painfully honest portrayal of adolescence ever on television. Joss Whedon went even further, saying, "I don't think teen TV really existed until My So-Called Life." The show had the misfortune of being slightly ahead of its time. It ended in January 1995, the same month that two new networks, the WB and UPN, launched with the specific goal of targeting younger viewers. What made Friends and ER so special wasn't just their quality, though both shows were exceptional. It was their timing. They arrived at the exact moment when the old television world was dying and the new one was being born. They were the last great appointment television shows, the final programs that could gather massive audiences around a shared experience. The behind-the-scenes stories reveal just how different things were in 1994. David Crane and Marta Kaufman had pitched Friends under the working title Insomnia Cafe. NBC executives worried that the coffeehouse setting was too hip and asked them to change it to a diner. The creators held their ground, and when Courtney Cox, the biggest name in the cast, sat down for that first lunch meeting, she told everyone there are no stars here. That egalitarian spirit would define the show's entire run. ER's script was virtually unchanged from what Crichton had written in 1974. NBC had initially offered to make it a TV movie, but Crichton refused. The only major changes were turning a male character into Susan Lewis and making Peter Benton African-American. The show launched George Clooney's career and proved that television could be just as cinematic as movies. By the time the 1994-95 season ended, ER was drawing over 30 million viewers per episode. Friends was well on its way to becoming a cultural phenomenon. The OJ trial had turned daytime television into must-see TV. And across America, those little satellite dishes were sprouting on rooftops like mushrooms after rain. Critics at the time didn't see it coming. Newsweek called it the hitless season and the safe season. Rick Marin dismissed the year's newcomers, calling it the season whose most exciting programming information is Dabney Coleman. But critics rarely recognize revolutions while they're happening. Looking back 30 years later, we can see 1994 for what it truly was. The year television discovered it could be more than just background noise or cheap entertainment. It could be art, it could be appointment viewing, and it could be deeply personal. More importantly, it was the year we learned that we didn't have to settle for whatever three networks decided to give us. The seeds planted in 1994 grew into the golden age of television we're living through today. Without the success of ER and Friends, there might not have been a Thursday night must-see TV that dominated the cultural conversation. Without DirecTV proving that people would pay for more choices, there might not have been a Netflix or a streaming revolution. Without the OJ chase showing us the power of live television, there might not have been the 24-hour news cycle that defines our modern media landscape. 1994 was the year we stopped being passive consumers of television and started becoming active participants in our own entertainment. We just didn't know it yet.